Hi everyone, welcome to the Dogood podcast. I am your host, Rob Watson, and got a great guest lined up today. His name is Steve Carter, who offers powerful, insightful guidance and healing through his Shamanic Practitioner work. Before we get into the episode though, I just want to say a little shout out to Positive News Magazine, who I'm supporting with this episode and most episodes that I do. They're one of the few people now out there that are doing good journalism about good things. We really could do with a healthy dose of good news when you don't really get that, do you, when you turn on the news or the TV or the radio, unfortunately, with the world that we're living in. So any opportunity that we can find out about empowering things as well, important things, then yeah, check out Positive News Magazine. And for my listeners, you can receive a 20% discount off a subscription. All you need to do is put in the words dogood20, all one word, into checkout, and you'll receive an exclusive 20% off a subscription for the year. Also, if you want to help support me on this podcast, you can do by checking out my Patreon page. You know, for little as a price of a cup of coffee each month, you can support me, my work, and what I'm doing to speak with these amazing people who are doing amazing work, doing plenty of good around the world with it. So yeah, you can check that out. Also, you know, if you enjoy this episode, please share it with a friend. If you want to leave me a review on Apple, that would be amazing. You can also subscribe to my newsletter, so you never miss out on an episode. Or you can subscribe on any of the usual channels, whether it's Apple Podcasts, YouTube, and the like. Moving into today's episode is with Steve Carter. Like I said, he offers powerful, insightful guidance and healing. One thing that struck me on his site was this quote, which was basically says, "However good life can be, your inner blocks suppress your natural sense of joy and exuberance. And as they are unconscious, you are mostly unaware of them. Guidance is sought to help dissolve these blocks, along with divinely guided healing interventions." So through his work, through doing soul readings, shamanic therapies, where he does a soul retrieval, as well as doing Tai Chi, he's really offering amazing service to the world. And I thoroughly enjoyed this conversation. I felt like I could have hung about with Steve all day. And to be honest, you know, it's one of those times when you have conversations with people that when you first see someone or speak to them, you get that connection, you know, like kind of a soul connection, and you have this remembering, and you kind of light each other up. And I felt like that was the connection that we got with Steve. And yeah, I felt like I've known him a lifetime, or many lifetimes for that matter. And it was nice to reconnect in this one, and hopefully there'll be many more times. But yeah, I love this conversation. So anyway, without further ado, let's get going. Firstly, Steve, I really appreciate you taking the time. It's really nice to come to your space and to talk to you today.
Thank you.
Really interested in this. We've been connected through a mutual friend.
Mm-hmm.
So for those that won't be aware of you, it'd be really just to get a bit of a sense of what it is that you do, how you came about it. Just, you know, it'd be nice to hear that.
Yeah, sure. So the best label, because it's difficult to find the right label I can use, is I'm a shamanic practitioner. So I work with shamanism largely, or practice shamanism, and that doesn't mean I'm a shaman, because a shaman is chosen by the tribe. So really, I'd be really cautious about using that label. But my work with clients is to help them find emotional freedom, and for them to find their, what I might describe as their highest unfoldment. And so I help to facilitate some of that process with them, or help them to facilitate it, really. So I do or facilitate shamanic soul readings. So they're intuitive sessions where I work with the client and guide them on life challenges, life purpose, relationships, anything they obviously particularly want to come with, because they usually do. And so I connect with the higher energies and bring guidance through for the client, whatever their soul forces want to be revealed at this time. I can't see into them, thank God for both of us. You know, it's a good thing. I just get what is right for them, and then I help them to bring that through, because awareness is like 90% of the healing. And then I usually do a healing intervention as well within the session. And that often includes me journeying with the drum, and that means I go to other realms and travel to other realms, and again it's a very similar process, and it's just I share what I'm seeing and experiencing, and we bring that healing energy through. And in terms of how I got into this, I also teach Tai Chi, and I've been on a journey the last, I guess, 15 years of self-exploration and opening to spiritual practice and deepening into myself, really. So very much, I'm very much on the path myself of transformation and healing, I suppose, with a view to making a difference in the world and being the best example I can be. And so that started, as I say, about 15 years ago. I used to teach at something called NLP, which is neuro-linguistic programming, which is a great starter, but had its limitations, and it was a perfect signpost, really, or stepping stone. And then I ventured more into the energetic side, and I started to look at shamanism and Tai Chi and meditation, and I love what I do.
Yeah, it sounds like it. In terms of the shamanic work, the transition from NLP, do you have to do some training in that? How did that come about? And
so I met an amazing teacher in about 2008 or 9, and I had a soul reading with her, funnily enough, my first ever, and it was so revealing. A couple of lightning bolts in there, stuff she couldn't know, and that really helped me, because there were things that I didn't want to share with people at the time. I would now, but I didn't want to at the time. And then it was something I really needed to expose. It's just I wanted a daughter, not a son. It was as simple as that, because I didn't feel like I'd be able to father a boy at the time because of some of my insecurities from my past, and she knew that, and it was just amazing. And then she reassured me, because we were by that time I'd had a son. She knew it, and I hadn't told her, and it was just an amazing experience. And she helped me to see that. She helped me to see what has since unfolded, that we have an amazing relationship, and he's a really well-balanced boy now. He's now 15, and we have an incredible connection, and I, like any parent, trying my best, and I'm really happy with the parent I am to both my son and my daughter. And that was a massive experience. And Julie then ran courses in Tai Chi and shamanism, retreats, workshops, and I started to I stayed with her for all her trainings. I trained with her for about 7 years, and that included the shamanism, which I guess I was drawn to the most. And that's become my path, very much so.
It must feel really nice to do something like what you do, and it is, not only is it often these things, I feel like often these things can start as a passion, as a hobby, but it's really nice to be able to get to move into a position where you think, well, actually this is what my career is, and to think that you can do that with your life and it can help to sustain you and give you abundance. It's really rewarding, because growing up, I imagine, in your teens, if you ever go to the school, you used to see those career counsellors or whatever and be telling us what we're going to do. You wouldn't imagine someone who said, "Oh, you're going to be a shamanic practitioner."
Yeah, you can do soul readings. Yeah, it's, no one ever said that. It's got to be said. And of course, I went through a quite a long period as a younger man, completely closed to, and that's why the soul reading was although I was opening by that point, it was such a powerful experience. It's beautiful work, because in my heart, as with many that do this kind of work, is helping others, is making a difference. So to be able to facilitate that, because that's all I do really, it's the energies come through, the guidance comes through. Obviously my energy's in it, but it is about allowing something to unfold, and to do that for others and for myself with the self-practice it's amazing. It really is.
So you had some light bulb moments speaking with this lady, and she said, and did you feel any of that things before it? Did you think you wanted, were you frustrated with what you were doing? Was it you wanted to change direction, but you didn't kind of know what was going to happen?
I was starting to wake up. That's a good question, Rob. I was starting to wake up to the truth that some of what I was teaching was the NLP. It was open to manipulation, and I was waking up really to that. And also I was starting to become aware of how that was being used in the world as well. And there is some amazing aspects to that content, shall we call it, and I've still used a couple of the techniques with clients over the years and myself. But I was feeling an urge that there was more. I'd lost my parents, and both parents passed away within 12 weeks of each other, so it's a major kind of shock to the system, and that was the greatest gift they ever gave me, really, because it was that really made me start to question there must be more to life. And as the NLP was very successful around my own business, and then in time it started to sit heavier with me, and ultimately I dropped it in the end. And I'd already started the training and the teachings and the practice. And I suppose the most, shall I tell you about a bit of a life experience which got me to change directions? So around that time I just started learning Tai Chi and practicing that, and some of the other stuff, and I was running in the park, and I started to get really, really itchy hands, like frustratingly itchy, like I couldn't understand why. And then I'd read recently that if you're not hydrated, then salt can rise to the surface of the skin, make you itch. I thought it's that, even though it was quite it's almost excruciating. I carried on running, and then as I carried on round the run, I swallowed and my throat was sore, and I thought, I'm coming down with something. And then I was thinking, no, healthy body, healthy mind, at the time, positive thinking and all that. Anyway, finally I stopped running. I thought, wait, enough today. And I was feeling my throat was sore. And then when I stopped running, I could see in my vision, I could see the outline of my eye, which was clearly swollen. And at that point, I looked at my hands and felt my throat and my eyes and said, am I having an allergic reaction? I said it out loud. And I heard a voice which said, you're going to need to go to hospital. I was in the middle of a field in the park. I almost wanted to look round, even though I knew there was no one there, but it was that audible. I've never ever had it that audible since, albeit I do hear messages, of course. It was so loud, and I questioned, am I going to be okay? And the voice said, oh yes, but you need to go to hospital. So I started to walk back to the car where I used to drive to the park to run, and back. I even on the way home I started to question, do I just need to go to the chemist, get some antihistamines? I don't want to be a fuss. So I went into denial. I'd obviously gone into shock, and bizarrely I actually put the car in the garage, went up to my apartment, and I was faffing about and getting a book and a charger for my phone and things, and the case I was sat in the waiting area for hours, totally in shock, and no awareness of the danger I was in. And then so in that faffing I heard the voice again. It said, Steve, you need to go to hospital. So this time it used my name, and it was a male sounding voice, and I was like, okay, I'm going to trust this. I'd obviously gone into denial or doubt or whatever, and I faffed about a bit more, and then it said really sternly, Steve, you need to go to hospital, you need to go now. And I was grabbed the bag I'd made, I put together, out the door. And another part of the miracle of this is I lived across from a community, walking centre, so not far. As I'm walking across the car park, I kept saying it out loud. Oh my God, my throat is closing. That was the phrase. And every time I said it, my voice changed. And with each step, it was closing more and more. And obviously, what I soon learned was I'd gone into anaphylactic shock. And so I walked in to only a chemist. It's not an A&E. 2 white coats with their backs to me. I went to speak and I couldn't make a sound. And in the shock, I didn't even think to tap on the counter. I just froze. Something made one of them turn round, and there was pandemonium, and there's white coats everywhere. They got an EpiPen, and saved my life ultimately. And I had to wait. There was a big strike on that day, and I had to wait an hour and a half for the ambulance to show. And the paramedic obviously I was on oxygen. The EpiPen had relaxed my throat. Panic stations were over. Yeah, it was funny because when they were all panicking, there was such an urgency, and I'm sat there with this oxygen mask on before I had the EpiPen, and they were shouting, "We need an EpiPen!" You know, it was real urgency. They were amazing. It was a real. I was aware of their energy, and I just sat just still. And at one point, she reading the instructions. This nurse, and she suddenly shouted, "I need another one. I've stabbed myself with it." You know, there was pandemonium, you know, sort of thing. And I just looked up at her and I'm like, "It's fine, it's okay." And then in the ambulance on the way to A&E to stay, I ended up staying over for a night. I asked the paramedic, "How come you're not striking?" And he said, "Well, we've got a duty of care and some of us are torn." And he said, "Let's face it, Steve, if you didn't live next door to a hospital, you'd have died today." And then when I thought about that, of course, I went back to being in the park. I might have wandered off, and of course, thankfully I kept hearing the voice, but it was quite amazing to know that, you know, that as I sat in the kind of the admission aspect of A&E, I'm sat on a bed, I'm now in a gown, and there was a nurse with her back to me, just a trolley, and I just thought about the voice, and I just said out loud, "Thank you." And the nurse turned around and went, "You're welcome, love." I think that's quite funny, really, when I look back, but very powerful experience.
It is an amazing story, hearing that. And that voice, what have you become aware of since that time? What is that? Who was that voice?
My higher self, I feel. It was the higher energies and my higher self working in a way that would work for me, that would get my attention. And I do receive guidance, of course. It's not, I don't always hear it. Sometimes I feel it when I'm with clients, but I've never heard it that strongly. I've heard it close here and there, but I've never needed a warning like that since. You know,
they had to get your attention, didn't they?
Oh yeah. And again, I was. If I heard it now, I'd trust it implicitly. But at the time, it was like, am I just going a bit mad here? You know.
Yeah. It's almost got like some like reminiscence of like a near-death experience almost, because that would have been your time.
Yeah, exactly.
To check out, really.
Absolutely.
If it wasn't for that voice.
Yeah.
Would you say that was, like, I often think about in life, like we've got like lots of different crossroads at certain points, and you know, we can go off in these different directions, and that, do you think that was a real like completely pivot point moment for you?
Yeah, and I'm so, I can't begin to tell you the gratitude I have around it, because not only was my life saved ultimately, and I was able to easily make the choice to stay here, because again, I could have ignored the advice, I suppose. But also, it set me on such a path, Rob. It was like, I mean, how could I deny that spirit was real? You know, and was, you know, how could I do that? That we have loving guidance around us, we all do, and it's if we could just awaken to that, and again, ultimately, it's our deeper self, our higher self that is guiding us, and there's such an opportunity there for our lives to transform, our life experience to transform.
Yeah, it's amazing. And we spoke briefly before we started, and we talk about like people who've listened to this podcast now have become a father, and you know, father of 2 children yourself, and we're talking about the kids now that are coming through, have maybe not have got as much karma or baggage somewhat, and it feels like, from my own experiences, maybe similar to you, like I had to experience a lot of darkness, or when I say darkness, more duality, and experimented a lot with recreational drugs, went down some dark paths, and that might still happen for the ones coming through, but I wonder whether it's like, it feels in some ways different, there's a different energy around them.
Yeah, me too, by the way. I also went down the path with drugs and what have you, anything to escape the insecurities I was harbouring, and so a lot of darkness, or like you say, the experience of duality, a lot of healing since, and yes, really powerful souls coming through, at this time. To me, it gives me great hope. There's a real sense that you're right, that in a lot of cases they have less baggage, less karma to clear perhaps, and yet at the same time they're in the worldly game, so they've got to play it. So of course some of them might also choose to go down some paths that will teach them something before they come onto a different path, the right path for them, if that makes sense. And yet I do get a real sense that, and no, really, you can tell in the children coming through, there's some really powerful souls coming through. And a teaching I once got from Julie, the teacher I mentioned, was that people in our generation have choice as to whether they want to replicate the ancestral conditioning, as in whether they want to be a product of their mum and dad and just carry on that chain. We have a choice as to whether we want to do that or whether we want to break free from that. Not, obviously there's lots of loveliness about our parenthood. Hopefully there's some there, and yet we do have that choice to find ourselves, really. And our parents had, in the previous generations, had less or no choice. They were a product of their ancestral lineage and products of their parents first and foremost. And the next generations coming through now have total freedom to be, and I'm seeing that. I see that in my children. I see it in other kids and friends' kids. I see them. They're here to really really set the roots for a new world.
Yeah, I keep thinking as you're saying that, and that really resonates with me about like completely like the family tree changing. It's like it's almost as if a new tree is being planted rather than that old one that goes past. Of course you can take, but I think about cutting the ties, really. Maybe it's cutting the branches or the roots, and then it's like no, because I often heard someone talk about this. It's almost like we are creating a new earth. It looks like if you switch on the news that everything's in pandemonium. And COVID the past 16 months, and before that Brexit, Trump, all sorts, financial crashes. It can appear, if you're just on the surface, that we're going down some dark paths with the environment and stuff. My feeling is that the information I've received and resonates with me is that we have to clear all this. We have to say, we have to face it. It has to come up to the surface, and the light has to be shined on the darkness for us to transform it. Otherwise, there's an element of feeling like you're just putting it under the carpet. You're not putting the blinkers on. I think you mentioned it a little bit before when you were telling us that story about just almost like positive mindset, stay positive. And I think there can be an element of that where we can do that, and it becomes a bit of fake positivity, doesn't it? It's like
absolutely.
It's you're not recognising the other side, and that means. And for me, what's going on now is what's going on in the external world, but we have to transform what we're doing. And I wonder whether, as we're transforming, all this stuff's coming out of us. That's why it looks like it is on the external.
Yeah, completely. Yeah, I think it's really beautifully put. I feel like we're all connected to mass consciousness, and mass consciousness is fed by each of us. So obviously in mass consciousness there's a lot of fear, there's a lot of difficulty, there are a lot of paradigms and beliefs about the world and what it is and just how it is and what have you. And so every time you've said it perfectly, in that we're conditioned to, and particularly in the modern world, to look for the positive and think positive thoughts, and ultimately it's a distraction on its own. That's all it is, because it's a distraction from the disturbance and therefore the reality of what might be occurring underneath, and the importance for each of us to turn and face that which we've been encouraged since being a small child. Don't cry. Parents would distract, or a lot of parents would distract the child from crying, make them laugh. At an early age, taught to suppress, such an early age, and then of course conditioning comes in, peers come in. Suddenly it's like maybe not safe, or it's not cool to show my vulnerability. So all of that is and the way society is as well. It kind of conditions us in that way, and so the importance to the opportunity to turn within and face some of that difficulty, which we've been harbouring because we swallowed it down all those years ago, and we've been doing ever since, is immensely freeing. And the more we do that, the more we vibrate at a different level, we radiate a different energy. Obviously, we feel greater bouts of peace and more frequent bouts of peace over time. And we really start to flow with life, because life will always bring challenges. They're part of life, as we know. Any belief that it's otherwise is just a recipe for suffering, really, because the challenges come and go. Yeah. And yet, the more we drop through that, the disturbance inside that we've been harbouring, we start to allow life to come and go as it, we start to flow with it more, and that's when the challenges don't touch us quite like they used to, and we happen to move through them easier or quicker. And even if we don't, we're okay with that until it's knowing that it will come to an end. It's that kind of awareness, I suppose. And every time we do this, Rob, for me, we're then influencing mass consciousness with some very powerful energy. And they say that the light is way more powerful. Well, they say darkness is just the absence of light. You take a candle into a room, the dark room, they say, it's an old spiritual teaching, but the light disappears. The dark disappears.
Yeah, it's so true. And something that's helped me is the feeling that how positive energy is far more integrative than, say, negative light or negative energy. So it doesn't take as many. People talk about old souls coming into the planet, or what do they call them? I should know this. Starseed, yeah, starseeds and indigo kids, and it doesn't take as many of them. It can be a very few percentage of them, but if they're kind of radiating that, then that will help to transform the old. And maybe there's an element of some of the elder, they as they move on and pass away, that helps to clear that as well. But it's really amazing having this conversation, because I often feel at times. We're having a street party tomorrow with all our neighbours. It's really nice coming together, but I'm not sure I can. I'll be talking about much of this stuff. I do to an extent, and maybe that's ego. Maybe I think often sometimes as you can be like that, and actually you can really surprise yourself. Actually, if you do say something, because you haven't got a clue what someone else is doing in their own house or what they're doing.
No idea. No. So. And again, the other thing that gives me great hope, Rob, is the ripple effect of this. I mean, as we were talking about when we've chatted previously, the amount of people that are waking up to wanting to live differently, live in a different way, is amazing. I see evidence of it all around. I used to go on a lot of retreats, and the amount of men that are now on retreats, we were chatting before, is incredible. I mean, it's at times it's 50-50. So, and I've never known that, and and that's within 10 years. It seems to me, in my experience anyway. But yeah, it's incredible time, and also I feel like we should also give our generation some credit, because there's a lot of us, our generation, that have come through and are really making a difference by, again, turning within and wanting to live differently and relate to others and ourselves differently. And that's been very much about planting the seeds for the next generation to come in and really see that change. Whether we'll see it in our lifetime is questionable, and yet I feel that they will. The opportunity is definitely there.
Yeah, that's something that feels for me. I remember hearing someone saying about, if you're going to kind of plant a tree or plant a forest, you might not be around to see it in all its glory, but that shouldn't stop you from actually planting that and seeing it on the way. And I'd like to think that as I go through my life, I want to take actions that I may not see in fruition, but I know I am for my daughter's children's children, or however it may be. Leave it in a better place. One thing I just wanted to mention, though, was about, as you said, about honouring past generations as well, the ones that might have had it more challenging, or as you said about they haven't had the opportunity that we had. Like for instance, look at the internet and what that's done in the past 20 years. How that is just, okay, it's got its challenges with social media, but it's a lot of the information that I have kind of received and helped me on my path has basically come through the internet. I've been then connected with people, but a lot of the, whether it's a podcast or it's a website, whatever, a book that I would find or hear about has came through this thing. So the older generations didn't really had it. They just have a wireless radio or TV, couple of channels, bookstore. Some of that could be quite limited. But yeah, I think it's honouring them. Like I think about my own like family line a bit. Like my dad's dad was, both my granddads were in the Second World War, but one of them actually got captured and was in a concentration camp for 3 years. All the family thought he was dead because he'd been missing in action. Would have got the letter, missing action. 3 years later, he pops up. He was in a concentration camp on the edge of border of Austria and Czech Republic. Or it would have been Czechoslovakia back then, I'm not sure. And you think what they must have gone through, the experience. And my father was born very short time after that. So it's not like the way it would have been now. Like you can't even fathom experiencing that now. Maybe there's some real issues going on in the Middle East, people experiencing a lot of war-torn situations. You look what's happening in Palestine and Israel and Syria and Iraq. There seems to be a lot of things that are getting healed or a lot of trauma there. But the thought of thinking what happened in them world wars, and there wasn't the the thought of seeing a counsellor, someone coming back after the war in 1945, didn't even know what the term PTSD wasn't even invented then. So yeah, it's
phenomenal really when you think of the suffering that has gone on and some of the challenges that we don't have to face. And absolutely, I agree, it's to be aware that those challenges are still going on in parts of the world. Plus, there are people who are dying from starvation. There's we've got a way to go for the new earth to truly bed in. Because I still, it can leave me speechless how we can allow that when we're throwing food away, and in other parts of the world there's very little resource. So there's all those sides to it, and for me, thanks for sharing such a powerful story, and I feel like what I tend to work with clients on more than anything is ancestral patterns, ancestral wounds. So that the beautiful thing is, even if first of all I think it's important to recognise that our parents had a certain style of parenting and difficulty. We will have been laced with challenges for sure, particularly as you know that both my parents were born around the time of the Second World War, so they were in a very difficult place, and their parents got very probably more difficult parenting because of course as we go back in time things have greatly eased since. So the more you go back, it's people have had some very, very difficult experiences, so that to me, although I had very loving parents, it wasn't perfect, and yet I know that there's nothing to forgive, if that makes sense. And then also every time I work on myself, particularly for something I feel is ancestral or family related, maybe it feels like it came from my dad, or there's an aspect of my dad in it, or my mum, every time I heal that healing ripples back. So, and that it ripples back. If you think, stood behind you now are your parents. There's 2 people behind you. The grandparents, there's another 4. Their parents, another 8, and obviously it just keeps doubling. And you see this triangle going backwards of this crowd behind you. Before you know it, you're in thousands and thousands of ancestors. And some of the ancestral wounds, the teachings say, and I feel this because I get it with clients, go back to ancient times, or go back, generations and generations, sometimes thousands of years. So the healing, the freeing that's being done for all the souls involved is immense, and that's where coming back to your question about the things changing on the earth. It's because that ancestral energy it's expressed here. It has to be through problems and pain. So the the more that's free, the more the world can truly change.
So then you're of the mindset that you're optimistic that we're going to go down the right path. It's going to be laced with challenges, and it's going to be uncomfortable. It's not just going to be a utopia overnight. Like, you only have to look. If, say, for instance, I say, look at the the British government, for instance, and the people that are supposed to can be considered to be our leaders. Like, for me, I look at that and think, do you know no leader of mine? No, I'm not following. You don't seem to be embodying integrity, authenticity, honesty. It seems to be the polar opposite of that in many ways. So we've certainly got a long way before we can suddenly embody or have a different system. And I wonder whether even the systems that are in place, I had a feeling recently that we're kind of disconnecting from that system. Like, I really feel like a split, because it just isn't what's in place now around the world. Doesn't feel to be serving humanity's best interest. It's part of the old. It's too big as well. It's too big. It's centralized. It's all about power. It's not all about power and control. But the things does seem to be like that. And some people could suggest, what we've seen over the past couple of years, elements of authoritarian sort of measures in places. I know people could agree with them, but maybe it's all happening. Well, I do believe it's all happening how it's supposed to be, and it's given us an opportunity now, I think, to feel like, can we move into our own sovereignty? What feels like freedom to us? Like, I like to feel like I follow a bit of a principle of do no harm. If I'm going about my life and I'm doing no harm to others, and I'm just, sometimes it feels like there's outside influences sometimes, and trying to say, don't do this, don't do that. And you can end up creating voices in your head. Oh, shouldn't do that, shouldn't that. But I feel like we're moving through a time, it's probably what it is to create this new version of us. Yeah, moving into a place where we can feel more free, but feel like, we can go about it and be our better versions of ourselves. So when we're better versions of ourselves, we're not going to do the old stuff. We're not going to do destructive stuff. We're not going to hurt others. So maybe those systems will not be necessary anymore.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. Really well said. Again, I feel like we'll get to a tipping point. I really do. I feel like that's coming, because you've said it perfectly, Rob. It's when you get to a certain level of vibration, if you like, a certain place in yourself, however we want to word it, it becomes impossible to do those things. It just doesn't resonate. It's against our nature. That's the truth. When we harm others, when we judge others, when we're harsh, when we criticize, when we control, it's all against our nature, and it's all coming from fear, and it's all coming from our inner pain, and we kind of project that out. That's, as many of the teachings say, we put it out onto, and again, unconsciously we can put it onto our children, we can put it onto our spouses, partners, on anyone in our lives. And of course, a lot of the world is set up on division and difference. So it's that's another trap that we've fallen into, and the ego loves to create an enemy. So really the system is laced with everything that you've said. I mean, the politicians, the system doesn't permit them, or the system feeds the disingenuous. It's really about self-agenda. It's about power. It's about ambition, and in order to reach that, there's obviously a lot of very questionable acts and pathways and what have you to achieve that, and at what cost, and it would be my question. And again, but it's the way I look at it is everyone's fighting a hard battle, and I keep coming back to that if I start to struggle, because if I judge the politician, then it's the same politician coming out of me, really. It's the same division, it's the same, and actually it feeds the energy. It doesn't, because every single thought we have, every single action we take, every single word we say feeds mass consciousness, because there's energy in all of them, and so that energy feeds. So If I start to judge and make the politician wrong, unconsciously I'm making the politician the enemy. There's the battle, there's the division, and I'm part of it. I'm half of that, and that does still happen. I'm not sitting here saying I don't judge. I'm working with awareness to watch for that, and then I remind myself that everyone is fighting a hard battle, and the system doesn't cater for freedom so much. It's set up a certain way. So, and finally, the other thing I wanted to say on that is freedom is within. We are already free within. It's like you said, you put it really well. For what it's worth, I feel like we've had that many shoulds and should nots, and this is the very conditioning that we're waking up to. That actually, it's people from the outside, as you said, that have told us how to be, how to look, how to behave, what's good, what's bad. And remember, there's ways like you'll be ostracized from the tribe. That subtle energy is still there. That message is there in a lot of these in a lot of the ways we're parented and schooled and stuff. If you don't get good grades, you won't be a successful member of society. There's so much of it is about control. And the more we wake up to the fact that I've been listening to these voices, I've been listening to these messages, and that's okay. I had no choice. I was a child, and yet, what needs to come from within? Where do I feel? How do I feel that I'm to be? And the more we work with awareness, the more that natural self, that true self, starts to emanate outwards.
When you're talking about the politician stuff, it reminds me of Gabor Mate, and how he talks about, these are the leaders that we have. Most of them have just been like traumatic children as well, and if we can see them in the light that they were children at one point and they had the same issues or whatever environment they were brought into, it doesn't mean that we shouldn't condone their actions.
No, absolutely.
But to be able to recognise in them that they've had a lot of their challenges, but they're part of the issues. I heard this thing once that unfortunately some of the leaders some of them have got like psychopathic tendencies, because the reason someone would work or go so hard to get to that position is because of all the stuff that's been going on for them and the challenges, and it's like to get to that position. But yeah, it's true, they do have. I think Gabor Mate talked about Trump and Boris Johnson and all of them, and talking about their past and how they are. It's no surprise, but can we move to a position where, like, I think about it now, the people that I more respect now would be, say, likes of Gabor Mate, other people that I would listen to, certain podcasters and other ones, and I listen and follow their teachings and wisdom more than if I was to turn on the news and listen to what Boris is going to say on a Monday at 5 o'clock to the nation. I kind of don't even tune into that. Because I just feel like that is not serving my interests, and it feels like it's tainted with fear and doomsday scenarios all the time, where I feel like if I've tuned into the other stuff, what you're talking about, I'll tune into people who are spiritual teachers, or just people who are what feels to be great examples of living the best life, being authentic, being truthful, being open and honest about the challenges that they've had, but showing how they're coming through them, and looking at, you're looking at the vibrating with health as well. Of course I'm going to listen to them people rather than Boris Johnson or whoever. And I think so it feels, that's what I was saying about the splitting, and the splitting is coming from, and what I love about these people that I'm tuning into, and probably lots of people do, podcasters or other people, is it's very much a from the ground up movement. These are individuals. It's not organizations. It's not big hierarchical structures. It's individuals making these differences. And the thing for me that's inspiring is thinking, well, if they can do it, I can do it.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, I remember when I started this podcast, all I needed was a decent microphone. I had a computer. We've all got computers, all I needed was a decent microphone, and if I feel like I've got something to say, I can say it. In the past, I would have had to go through media school, and I'd try and get into broadcasting, to get into radio or TV, to someone. I had to ask someone, or someone else had to decide that for me in some ways. But now it's like, now, and I think I'm seeing it with a lot of the children and people coming up, they can just start Etsy stores, or they can do whatever they want. They can do bakes that bake their own stuff and do farmers markets. You know, there's so much opportunity to do it. I've kind of gone off on a bit of a tandem there, but
I don't think you
it's
have.
often the case.
The barriers are starting to dissolve, aren't they? Some of the barriers, obviously many are still very much in place. And it is, let's say it is, the system is about control. There's no getting away from that. So, and again, it's not the more I make the system wrong and blame, then I'm feeding it. And that can rise up in me, don't get about anything. Again, it's like, I think some of the barriers are dissolving, creating opportunity for people start to realise a sense of freedom in themselves. And the more we realise it, the more then we're intuitively going to want to seek more of that. So we start to, and the only place at some point we get the message or the sense in life that everything is within. So it's, you know, that inner freedom is who you really are can't be not free. Who you really are is freedom and can't be controlled. So, and that's what coming back to the sovereignty you talked about before, for me, that's what that is about. I can only influence me. I can try and persuade you, I can try and control you. Chances are both are going to fail unless maybe the persuasion is for your highest good and it's coming from my heart and I'm just trying to help you see, for instance, if you were down on yourself, that sort of persuasion is really healthy. But if it's to my own ends, if I'm trying to do it for my own ends and my agenda, chances are it might work for a while, but ultimately it will fall flat on its face. And I feel like that's what's starting to happen more and more in the world. A lot of, as we've seen, so much has gone on behind the scenes is being revealed, and each time that happens there's an awakening. And I feel like with the politicians, it's for me, it's and with everyone in life, it's to see, even if I don't manage it in that moment, is that whenever people are controlling or cruel to others or whatever it might be, maybe they do appear like a psychopath or whatever other label we would use, it's all coming from pain. However successful their lives seem to be, it's all coming from pain. And if I then judge that, if I then make them wrong, if I make them the enemy, that's coming from my pain. And technically that's where the Trump or the Johnson is coming out of, you know, my version of it. Yeah. It might be less extreme in that example, or it might not. You know, it's the point is we've all got the capacity egoically. We've all got inner disturbance, inner pain from the conditioning we've been talking about. We've all grown up in it, and so to me, that's it's to become aware of that. The part of me that wants to judge, the part of the energy in me that really wants to, that is maybe I'm angry, is to be with that anger. Because if someone cuts you up on the road and you feel rage, let's say hypothetically, that rage was already in you. They've just triggered it. And so life is a series of triggers. That's why it's such a gift. So egoically, our mind wants to say, they're this, they're that, how can they, whatever it might want to say. It's because the ego thrives on judgment, it thrives on conflict, so it grows. And that's why we naturally feel, I'm going to judge, this feels better because it's thriving, but actually what it's doing is deepening our own pain within, because it's against our nature. Our true nature is to be lovingly accepting. Now, doesn't mean we don't hold our boundaries, doesn't mean, like you say, we condone bad behaviour, and yet that's where we really start to stand in our power, because the more we come from that compassionate self, the more powerful we become. It's as simple as that. It's immense, the power that we have inside, and it is a completely different power to the one we've become conditioned to thinking is power. Yeah. It's a wholly different story, as we know.
Indeed, beautifully said.
Thanks.
So in many ways, when we're seeing these people or what's going on, can we just say thank you to it then?
Yeah, why not?
And say thank you for showing, for helping to release this collectively, or even show me what's out of alignment.
Yeah, absolutely.
That I need to show. Because if I'm watching something and like I see it, I know I drift in and out, and sometimes I've got a bit frustrated with things, maybe what I'm seeing. In the past, I've kind of not felt like I've not let it touch me. But I think because things have become so in our faces, at times it has triggered stuff in me, and it's me catching myself after and going, I got triggered then.
Me too.
I got triggered, but the person next to me didn't get triggered, so that's showing that it's my trigger. But someone else could blow the top off at that, and so it's just seeing it all as a lesson, all as part of the growth, isn't it? And I think when I started, I don't know, sometimes I use the term awakening, and sometimes I don't really like it, because I think it's tinged with ego as well. I awakened.
Exactly. I'm more woke.
I'm woke, yeah.
Because I think that's really interesting. I'm with you at this whole I'm more woke, I'm an awakened one. If you look at spirituality, there's ego, of course, has infiltrated it like it will everything, and it just becomes, and this is a challenge for us all, me included very much, is to watch for the ego who suddenly is a spiritual person, and it's just using different labels to for the same, just a different image really, but it's still an image. I think that's something that it's a really profound responsibility, and again a challenge we all have to go through, is to keep witnessing where we're falling into the trap of thinking we're more special or more superior or more awoke, or it's just the same games. And perhaps coming back to what we were saying, the politicians as well, is like it's the if I judge anything about someone, so I make someone the enemy, or I control someone, or I'm unskillful in some way, all of that's coming from pain, and that's a sign for you to look within. It's a sign for me to go within and look, where's that coming from, and be with that. So I do a lot of breath work, that kind of thing, and that really is something else. It's an amazing journey.
So in terms of your soul readings, I had a look at some of the testimonials of people that have had sessions with you, and some of them saying like this had such clarity, and how it was almost like, it felt like a number of years of therapy all wrapped up, and it was all done in, all had such perspective from it for an hour. Can you talk us a little bit about some of how the soul readings unfold, and maybe is there a bit of a theme that people might come to, or with you?
Of course, a very, very humbling comments that you've described, because it, again, a really important aspect of doing this work is to recognise that whilst there's some Steve in it, my energy's in it, as I said earlier, it truly is about some about the higher energies coming through. So that client is very much being served by life, is being aided by these amazing energies that we all have around us, so that's the first thing. Is I often say to the client, there's healing energy transmitted throughout, but it doesn't come from me, certainly, and it doesn't really come through me, it comes through us. So just like in this exchange, Rob, we're creating, like, if you like, the plus and minus of a battery. So there's this energy flow cycling really, and that's what happens in the soul readings. And I then bring in the guidance and call in the healing energies, and it's very much a two-way process. So because again, it's about the client being engaged, so they can express whatever they feel they need to express, they need help with, they want to say, because sometimes they'll get a bit of guidance and then they'll say, oh, this is making me think of this, and so there's a process going on. So a lot of it is about me holding space. I do talk quite a lot, because of course the purpose is to bring guidance through, but there's a lot of holding space, which is about being still and allowing this process for the client to unfold, and then the realizations are happening. And as I said earlier, often they just need to be aware of something, and then the healing starts to unfold, because it's something that they've suppressed or they were unaware of, they were just unconscious of. And then typically they'll at the start I invite the client to either share and talk about why they're here, and perhaps they have got a life challenge they want to share, or a relationship feels like it's breaking down, or whatever it might be. And some client, or I give them the alternative that I'll just tune in and we just go from there. So it's very much about flowing from that point in that two-way process. And then at some stage, and I would say 90% of them now, I'm guided to either do a journey or another intervention with the client to help them to free what it is that's been brought to attention. And going back to you asked about themes, the strongest theme at the minute is ancestral. There's so much, and there's a couple of interventions, including journeying, that I facilitate with clients that helps them to undo that ancestral pattern. And again, that then ripples back far and wide, so that it's such an honour to do the sessions, because not only are people, I'm very grateful that people are finding them as powerful as they are. I know somehow that, again, me and the client, you and I, we're making a difference just by exploring these energies, never mind facilitating interventions to help true freedom to start to ripple.
It sounds incredible. I'm gonna have to book myself on an interview.
I can't sell them. I really can't. It's like it's great to be able to talk about them, I guess, because they are just, there's something in them that's ordinary. What I do is ordinary, but there's an extraordinariness, if I can say that word, in it. Again, because of the energies that come through. It's nothing to do with me, really.
That's what sounds beautiful about it, is that you're a channel in many ways for that energy, and working in partnership with that. But as you say, you're working in partnership with that. Every time someone else comes, it's a different energy. It's tapping into something else to come through.
Yeah, they're fingerprint. All of them are fingerprint unique. So exactly that. Hollow bone is often a teaching that's been given in some of the spiritual teachings, and just that kind of allowing, and that's about being present and working with prayer to call in the guides, and being alert to, let's keep Steve out of the way, and just allow that. I'm in it again, but it's to allow that energy again to come in through us both. It's that. And there's something then in the readings. That's when I can have awareness that for the the interconnectedness between us all, because again it just they wouldn't work otherwise. It just without sounding too spiritual happy clappy, I get a sense of the oneness, and that's just. And so each reading I do is somehow very nurturing for me, often healing for me too.
Absolutely.
And as you probably know, Rob, we attract people in a very similar vibration, and often clients, and I might have 5 clients with the same challenge, and then I know it's something for me to look at as well, so I'm on the same path as they are. I do a lot of self-practice, as I've said. I'm on the healing journey, no different from anyone else, and certainly no better.
What I like about that is it's almost having a level playing field between the teacher and the student. In many ways, remembering that the teacher is learning just as much from the student, and vice versa, rather than that old model of almost do as I say, not as I do kind of
exactly.
thing.
And that's taught me such a lot. Obviously, it's really lovely to hear you talk about the kind of dad you are and want to be, and all that. You're quite Stella's obviously very young, and I my kids are my greatest teachers. They have been, and it's a bit of a cliche, but they are. They and including calling me out on things. There's been times when they've said, or Dad, or especially my daughter, she'll challenge me, and she's helping me to nurture the mature masculine more and more in myself. That she's helping me to see some of the patterns that I do think stem from my dad and his dad and so on, and they're priceless. And that's just showing me that in parenting, a lot of so-called love in parenting is really about control. I don't mean parents don't love their kids, of course we do. I know there's some tragic examples where they're less able to show it, and yet we were controlled as children, and that's in our energy again. So it's like you say, I love the word facilitation. You know, often I'll facilitate with my kids, and sometimes I'll slip into control. Don't get me wrong, I'm still healing it, but that's when I can see the power of what's unfolding between the three of us, because I'm a single dad at the minute, you know, and we just have they're amazing. And again, they're amazing anyway. They don't need me to help them be amazing. And yet there is something around allowing and holding an energy and working through challenges together. And there's and that I feel is some of the difference of what's starting to ripple on the planet. We're starting to open to the fact that we have to treat each other differently, because anything I do to you, Rob, is like a double-edged sword. It cuts us both. And even a judgment, they say, is energetically, you might not know I'm judging you, but it'll affect your energy field, and that'll ripple through. That's it. With that sensitive, it's that you might not be aware of it all on the surface. And of course, that I'm also equally judging myself. That's the trick. That's the trick of the ego. That's how it thrives. So the more I work on myself and really turn that within to explore radical levels of self-love, my intention is to really reach levels I wouldn't have imagined possible, and to open to that stillness that I am within. That then ripples out in my words and actions and regard for others, and again holding compassion. The more I heal in myself the darkness, and I've worked through some difficult stuff, then if I see someone else in darkness, I'm more likely to get it rather than judge. You know, that's the journey, really, I guess, for me.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, very much begin to... It was around about 10 years ago, just hearing that message, what you put out is what you get back. And, and I think, well, I want to be sending out, as pure good attentions as I possibly can, and catch myself. And I get that false positivity. I can't just always be it, but recognise when it actually comes up and go, actually don't send this out by words now, because that'll be, what you put out. You can't take it back once you've said it, or if you do something harmful or whatever, it's gone out there, but can you catch it in you? Do whatever you need to do to breathe, come into your body for a moment, allow it just to pass through. And the more I feel like I can do that, the more when that trigger comes up, the charge has been taken off it bit by bit by bit.
Brilliant.
And if you can, I'm not amazing at it. I know I don't want to. Something I like to talk a lot about being authentic on here. And there's been times just recently where I've been either felt too tired from being up in the night with the little one, and me and my wife got a very good relationship, but there'll be times when stuff just comes out and says, and you're like, and then you catch yourself after, it's like, oh God, I can't believe I was acting like that, and the rage or the energy that might come out, but like you said, it's at the core, it's the pain, unresolved trauma from other things. And what I'd like to sort of like maybe move this towards slightly is, we talked about earlier on how it seems much more of a balance of men and women who are looking to do this work now, whether it be from breath work or what, but something that's become extremely popular is like plant medicine and stuff. And again, that seems to have heard some people. There's someone who set up a retreat centre, I think in Costa Rica, called Rhythmia. And the guy who set it up was from LA, and I think he was a stereotypical kind of guy who'd looked at it from the outside, achieved it, developed all this money, fame or whatever, but there was so dead inside from chasing after what we perceive to be success, what is happiness. And we're seeing, say for instance, person who pops into my head now, someone like Amy Winehouse, phenomenal talent,
amazing,
what a voice, had, from the outside, and people said had everything, but actually at 27 it was just too much for her because of whatever. And it's so common now, so I think the more of us that can realise that, we should follow our passions, for sure, but chasing after an idea of success or fame, thinking that's going to bring it, we only have to see how destructive it is. But bringing me back to the pain element is, it feels like a lot of people are going on, like I myself have spoken about openly, I've seen a therapist, I've seen one since about my late 20s, really helped me at that time. But it feels like there's an element now where people there's an acceleration of energy, and it doesn't require 10 years of sitting face to face next to someone for 2 hours a week. And why I mentioned that guy from Rivmere, he supposedly had a ceremony, ayahuasca ceremony, and he went into the ceremony and he tapped into, spoke to the mother ayahuasca or however it is after going on the journey, and was speaking when they were showing him that his heart was black, that it was almost, and what they did on that ceremony is, took his heart out, was cleaning it, put it back in, but then it went black again, and then he got given a choice saying, do you want a new heart? And he got given what felt like a new heart, and he said literally it was like the way he felt the day after, he had felt like he cleared so many decades of abuse and pain and trauma in that one moment. Now, people might listen to that and go, right, great, I'm in, but I think we also have to treat it with a lot of respect and not go into it, because I know some friends, they'll be doing it almost monthly, and there's an element of me thinking, whoa, you need some integration time. Can we, what are your thoughts on like the plant medicine?
I think you're right. There's an acceleration for sure, and an expansion, and again it comes back to what we're saying about everything we do influences mass consciousness. So there's an amazing evolution in therapeutic and healing practices, and that includes all aspects, including plant medicine and non-plant medicine. So like you said, you've mentioned breath work. I also do a lot of breath work. You talked about just before, that some even with your wife, the rage can come up in a disagreement, and again, another of our greatest teachers are intimate relationships, because guaranteed they're bringing stuff up more than anything else.
100%.
Yeah, maybe your kids can equal that at times. And yet again, everything's a trigger, so it's a gift for us to look at. So I feel like the practices going on around breath work, around sound healing is amazing because of the vibration. And once upon a time I would have thought sound healing was a lot of nonsense. There was a time when I would have thought all of this was a lot of nonsense, and yet having experienced sound healing, the vibration there's something immensely beautiful about what happens at an energetic level, a physical level, an emotional level, and then if we think that everything in the universe is sound, because everything's in the universe is vibration, whether we hear it or not, everything is making a sound, they say, and if that's the case, then that means that applies to our bodies. Everything. We're only here because of vibration. We're only sat at this table because of vibration. Otherwise, we wouldn't be solid, and we wouldn't be here. It couldn't happen. And so, by using vibration, there's a beautiful. By using sound healing with intention, there's a beautiful opportunity there, and that's rippling out so much. And then, in terms of the plant medicine, a lot of these sacred practices have been utilised by the tribes, the indigenous tribes, for thousands of years, for a long time. They go back through the lineage, and there's no question that Mother Nature, and I do feel this in all aspects, coming back to what we eat, what we put in our bodies, everything's about vibration. Is it in alignment with you, or is it not? Is it helpful to you? Is it not? And generally we'll know the answer to that by the experience or the after feeling. So coming back to food, staying with food, if I feel really depleted after that, or whatever, difficult stomach the next day, whatever, perhaps that's not right for me. And the more we purify the foods we put in our bodies, the more that also has a very significant impact on your healing, your mental health, everything else. And the plant medicines themselves, when done ceremoniously, and I totally resonate with that, by the way. I think with any healing practice, there should be some process time. It's really significant to allow things to fully unravel, unfold. And the plant medicines are opening people up to the sacredness of life and the sacredness of themselves, and of course in some cases, as you've shared with your example, the harm that's being done internally that we're perhaps not aware of. So totally agree. Like with anything, there's a bit of an explosion happening. There's people doing it a lot and what have you, I feel it's really important to seek out a very experienced ceremonial facilitator to explore those. But they are. It seems to me they are definitely part of the solution. They're not for everyone, but they're definitely part of the solution of this, bringing in this new earth and helping this healing wave to truly gather more momentum.
Yeah. And there's another side in terms of people that might not feel like, working, journeying with a shaman to do these things, but there's other stuff that's becoming, I think it's MAPS in America, looking at likes of MDMA therapy and ketamine therapy, these being guided almost by a therapist, which might feel a bit more in the traditional setting, not so traditional, but
yeah, I know what you mean there.
and those are showing great opportunities for healing as well, to release stuff. And I think it's really important for me, like I've got some experience with this personally myself, and it feels like it's so important to actually, that's why not only is it you need someone to guide you with it, you then need follow up, you need support after it, because often when you can trigger, for me anyway, triggered something as a release, that isn't just, oh great, it's gone. It can be, but there's a time of it. It could take some stuff. It can take weeks, or for me, months, years. To finally whoa.
A lot of healing interventions or a healing crisis or a seeming breakthrough can simply be a bit of a plug being pulled. So then, a process that needs to happen for that healing to fully integrate and realize can take a long time. And of course, if it means facing some difficult aspects of ourselves that we weren't aware of, maybe some memories or just an emotion that just keeps coming up to clear, that can be tricky. And that's where it's definitely really healthy to seek support for sure, and again seek out experienced people who are very skilled at that. It's really important. So I think it's amazing, really, the opportunity that we have, the different avenues we have to seek. And I always follow my heart. If something's right for me, I'll feel it. And that's really, really led me, helped me to become, I guess, more aligned to what I guess is my true path. And as a result, there's been for myself some, incredible breakthroughs along the way, and still lots of waking up to do, lots of healing that's ongoing. And yet, there's a very different man, as it'll be the same for you, I'm sure, Rob. A very different man sat opposite you now than we would have had 10 years ago.
Yeah.
And some of that's obvious. There's been 10 years of life and all the things we face, and yet there is something about for me it's an undoing, and the plant medicine absolutely helps to facilitate that. The other energy practices absolutely help to facilitate that too. Equally, I would suggest when they're done well and the right intentions there, and also a lot of it's about the openness of the individual, how open we are to shift and change, and that's about surrender and trust.
Beautiful. It's like that. I often feel like when you're saying about that, go back 10 years ago, the person you were then, it gives me so much excitement as well to think, wow, there's so much more to come. That doesn't mean I shouldn't be in this moment to enjoy this moment, but it's such an exciting path. And when you realise, like you were saying, you shared that really open story about when you had that voice, you were having an attack, and if you hadn't got, to go through them experiences, but to know that there's support there with us all the time,
Yeah.
And this life, we talked about energy before and vibration. It's not just we got sat by a table now. You could come in, just this 3D world. That's all there is. Newtonian physics or Darwinism, survival of the fittest and all that element, which is. But when you actually go beyond that and think actually how fantastic life truly is, I've had some amazing synchronicities with stuff, and there's left no question in my mind that things are so much more fantastic than we could possibly believe.
Yeah, me too.
And I'm like, this life is magic, absolute magic.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, wow. And I'm like, thank God this happened to me when I was like in my 30s. I'm like, great. I'm like, brilliant. But don't get me wrong. I love that analogy of pulling the plug.
Yeah.
And sometimes you got to be careful what plug you pull in, because you got to be ready for that release as well.
Albeit, I do think, sorry to cut in, I do think life won't allow you to pull the plug unless you're ready.
Yeah,
and
it wouldn't show its face.
Absolutely. And also I go by the teaching which came as guidance years ago, that you're never given more than you can handle, ever. Now, I might not always feel that in the moment if I've got real stuff coming up, and yet I remind myself of that and something softens, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So I didn't mean to cut in, but
no, it's
magical beyond the fact that you and I are sat here with the technology, with the energy, in a safe space, with a roof over our heads, although we perhaps don't need it so much today. But that to be able to have this quiet, this privacy, both sat here healthy, seemingly healthy, we have the energy from the food, all of which comes from Mother Earth, and the water we drink, just those basics that we take for granted. And yet also to be able to have, and let's also recognise, that there's some awareness at this table to be able to have this, to be able to explore these topics and share our realizations. That's also something to be truly grateful for, that we're opening, and not just yourself and I, society and humanity is opening to some of the deeper teachings of life, that there is an energy around you, and life's got your back. And if I fall flat on my face, it's because either something wasn't right for me, or I need that lesson for my growth, and it's not easy. And yet the more I open to that, as I breathe through the pain or the difficulty or the loss or whatever it might be, something in me is enriched in that experience, and something in me is aware of that, and that awareness seems to deepen more and more as we go. And that's when life becomes truly magic. That's when, it never becomes magic, that's when we become aware of that. And I guess to be there and to have an awareness of that magic at all times, in every moment, is a place perhaps that we're heading to.
I feel like that's a perfect time to wrap up our conversations today. Great. So Steve, if someone is listening to this and they're thinking, I'm extremely intrigued about Steve Carter and what he's doing, how can they find out about you? How can they potentially look at what your offerings are, potentially get in touch to do a session with you?
Yeah, easiest way is I have a website, is deeper-self.com. So I called it Deeper Self I guess for obvious reasons, and deeper-self.com is the website, and my number's on there as well. So yeah, they can send me an inquiry or whatever, or get in touch in any way, shape or form. It'd be lovely to hear.
I'll include the links to that anyway in the show notes and stuff for the episode, so people will be able to connect with it.
Yeah, of course.
But yeah, I appreciate our conversation. It's been, that is an hour and a half pretty much that's just slipped by, and I always love these conversations, and that when I'm in the moment and enjoying it, besides me feeling like I need the toilet now, I'm like, it's like it just sips by, and it's a pleasure. And for me to be able to have, like you said, like how that element of being grateful for what we have, having a conversation with someone, it can be an everyday thing, but like that's where the richness comes from. It's not the new car, it's not the latest iPhone, it's not the fancy holidays, and you think about how much effort and energy you have to put in to get those things, when actually the true stuff, the best stuff, can be free. And like you were talking about freedom before, about us actually, the freedom's with us already. We don't have to go looking for it, but we just have to let go of what no longer serves us to them to choose to go in a different path. And that path can not be an expensive path or cost us too much, but we can have time. Like I think about time, it's so like like this is a Friday morning, afternoon time. You know, it's nice for me to just come and do this on a Friday when in the past I might have been to and fro to work at an office working. It's like, wow, this is like, I feel like I'm winning at life.
Yeah, it's amazing, and I couldn't agree more. What a gift. And also the most amazing thing really for me, or the most amazing channel, if you like, to experience that richness of life is connection. So this morning, as we did when we first met on the phone, we connected. You know, that's the richness for me that everything then seems to ripple out from, you know. So yeah, absolute pleasure to have you here today, and thank you for this opportunity to chat.
There is today's episode all wrapped up with Steve Carter. If you want to check Steve out, you can go onto his website, which is deeper-self.com, and you can check out everything that he's got to offer. I, for one, am sure that I will be having a session with Steve. He didn't really get that in the end of it, but we kind of did a bit of a drumming session together. And I fully just like loved it. And he was like, you know, take this drum home with you and borrow it and take it. I'm like, are you sure? It's like this amazing drum which has been hand painted, and I've been using it at home. It's been really good. In the morning when I'm up with Stella, we have a little bit of a drumming session, the two of us, and she kind of lights up and she's kind of getting used to it. I've got a feeling with Stella she's going to be doing something musical in her life, so I'm gonna kind of give her the opportunity to play about with all sorts of stuff. She's got a little tambourine, and we've got healing bowls around, and she loves the wind chimes in the house. So, and a drum has been a nice addition. So I appreciate you lending me this, Steve, and I'm sure I'll give it you back soon. Okay, so if you enjoyed this episode, please share it with a friend. You never know. You know, sometimes when I'm listening to something, a little thing will just pop off in my head. I think, you know what, I think this episode will be good for this person, and I'll send it on to them. Not just what I actually do as well, because I do that as well. Sometimes I've done an interview with someone, I go, you know what, I think this will be really good for this person. But even when I listen to other podcasts or interviews, I will often think, you know what, I'm just gonna share that, you know, just say, you know, maybe you're open to this. So if you think someone might be interested in this, or might be think that having a session with Steve or just listening to the story and the conversation could be helpful. Anyway, you can also subscribe to my Patreon page. Like I said, for as little as the price of a cup of coffee each month, you can support me and what I'm doing to continue to put out good episodes with good people. So I'm going to leave it there today. And rather than playing out with the usual theme music that I've got for the podcast, I'm going to leave it with a little session of Steve just doing a bit of drumming to round it off. So it seems like a nice way to bring this episode to a close. Well, anyway, until next time, have a good one.